Hi there, it's Jess in the Rada Kitchen. Thanks for joining me. Today we are going to prepare an Italian pasta dish. We are making pumpkin gnocchi and it's going to be covered in a rich and creamy spinach, sage, and butternut squash sauce. Let's go ahead and start prepping our veggies. All right, so we're going to start cubing our butternut squash. So using my Rada French chef's knife, I'm going to take the top off, get rid of that and the bottom. All right, cut this in half. And if you've never worked with this squash before, it's pretty solid. So I'm just going to carefully come down the middle, all the way through. And we're going to scoop out that little bit of seed at the bottom. So what we are going for here with our butternut squash is about 1-inch cubed sections. And I mentioned before, these things are pretty tough to cut through. So just be careful with your hands while you're using a super sharp knife like I am. One more, there we go. So I'm gonna take each piece individually and come back through and cut right down. Turn these around. All right, so here I'm using a yellow onion and I've cut it in half. Now I'm just gonna take my knife, score it down the top, and I'm leaving the root intact. Gonna bring that knife through the middle, not all the way, and down the top again. Into our baker, and we'll do the other side. Okay, so now it just gets olive oil and then it goes in to the oven. All right, we're gonna start prepping our sauce. So I have 2 garlic cloves that I'm just going to do a real quick chop on. And then we're gonna be using some fresh sage. So now we have our fresh sage that we're gonna get ready for our sauce. And if you haven't worked with this before, it is pretty flavorful. So a little bit in this dish is gonna go a long ways. But I absolutely love the sage with the butter that we're going to make with our sauce and then our squash. It's a great pairing together. Okay, so that's ready. We are going to put this in our pan. All right, so we're going to start on our sauce, but while I'm doing that, I have my water that I've salted in my pot that's going to boil. Our gnocchi is going to cook so quickly that we don't want to do it too much in advance. But while we're waiting on that, I have butter that I've already melted, a half a stick down in my saucepan. To this, I'm going to add that garlic and sage that we chopped, and we're going to let this go just until it becomes tender. So here in my pan, we've been sauteing the garlic and the sage, which I cannot even describe how heavenly this smells. To this, I'm going to add our thickening agent, which is our flour. And you just want to remember, anytime you're making a bechamel sauce, which is what we're doing, you want to use equal parts of fat to flour. And I don't always cook with real butter, but you have to do the real thing and not skimp out and get margarine or something artificial. It's totally worth it in the end, even if it does have an extra few calories. All right, so just stirring this constantly with my Rada non-scratch spoon. And we're gonna cook off that flour taste for just a few more minutes and we'll add the rest of our ingredients. So now we're gonna add our liquid to our pan. I'm using some whole milk. You could use half and half as well. And we're just going to whisk this in, and I'm using my Rada Handy Stir, which I've said before, I absolutely love this thing because it covers all that flat surface in your pan as opposed to a circular wire whisk. So just keep that moving. And then the other portion to this is going to be our chicken broth. And just whisk that in as well. So now we are going to add our Parmesan cheese, and I am using about 1.5 cups. This is going to pair so well with that squash because it has that nutty, salty flavor to it. So just whisking all the way in. I'm working over a medium-high heat because I want that sauce to thicken with the flour and the milk and the chicken broth. So a few minutes like this, and then we'll drop the temperature and we'll wait to add our squash and onions that are roasting. All right, let's go ahead and prep our spinach. So I have already pre-washed this, and we're just going to come in and do a quick chop on it. This is going to look so pretty in our sauce with all of that orange squash. So our sauce is becoming nice and thick like we want it to. To this, I'm going to add just a few seasonings. Some black pepper, and then my favorite seasoning to put in any white sauce that I make, a little bit of nutmeg. And it's just that hint of something that will have your guests asking what it is, but they won't be able to pinpoint it. So just a tiny little bit will do. Whisk that into your sauce, and we'll let that sit until we're ready for our veggies. All right, so our water is boiling and ready for our gnocchi. I am using gnocchi that has pumpkin in it. You can use just regular potato gnocchi. You could use sweet potato, whole wheat, whichever you can find. And you can find this now at almost any supermarket, either in your pasta aisle or it might be in the frozen section. And if you've never had this before, it's basically a little Italian dumpling made with potato and flour. And you can see the little rivets in it that come from a fork being pressed into it. You just cook these for about 2 minutes until they float. So into our pot, and when they're done, it's like little fluffy pillows of heaven that we're gonna cover in our delicious cream sauce. So here we have our beautiful cream sauce, and it's exactly the consistency that we want. It's been seasoned, but if you noticed, I didn't add salt like I normally would because we're using a lot of Parmesan cheese, and that already has a lot of sodium in it. So because of that, we used a low sodium chicken broth. So into our pot with our vegetables. And I'm gonna use my hand here. There we go, actually. And if you have to do a little bit of spinach at a time, to allow it to wilt down so that it all fits in, just give it a little bit of a stir, make sure it's getting covered with our sauce, and go back and get a little more until it all fits. So this is the consistency that we want our sauce, and you can see that our spinach is wilted, and we don't want to overcook it because we want to retain that beautiful bright green color. So here we have our cooked gnocchi that we're putting into our sauce, and as soon as I pull this out of the water and strained it, I put cold water on to stop the cooking process because it does not take too long for these guys to get overcooked, and then they become mushy and sticky, and it's just not what we want. So here we go, into our pot. Just gonna dump these in and give them a stir, and we are ready to plate this. So here we have our pasta all plated, our beautiful gnocchi covered in our delicious creamy spinach, sage, and butternut squash sauce. I'm just going to top this off with a little bit of freshly shaved Parmesan cheese, and you are ready to dig in. You could even add chicken to this dish, and it could be the star of the show, or you could serve this as a side to any meat any night of the week. Thanks so much for joining me. Be sure to check us out at radacutlery.com and to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can get more great recipes just like this one.